Hey guys, this is Mrs. Yeagle, and I know that you have been anxiously waiting for chapter 21 of Addison Cooke and the Tomb of the Khan. This chapter starts on page 211, and it's called Karakoram or Karakoram. I don't know, you may have noticed that I've said that word differently each time that I pronounce it, and so truthfully, my Mongolian geography is not great. So I might call it Karakoram, I might call it Karakoram, I don't know, we'll just see what happens. So chapter 21, Karakoram, that sounds good. It was Addison who discovered the theft. He woke early in the morning and set to work brushing every last grain of sand from his shirt, tie, slacks, and blazer until they were spotless. Between the sandstorm and the sleeping arrangements, there was sand everywhere. The entire cleaning operation took 10 minutes. Molly woke next and began stretching for her morning kung fu practice. She could already do front splits without trouble. It was the side splits that needed attention. Eager to get a start on the day, Addison circled the wooden mining cabins looking for the camels and was surprised to discover there weren't any. He was quite sure there had been 3 camels the night before. He thought about retracing his steps from the prior evening, but couldn't think of anywhere he might have misplaced 1 camel, let alone 3. When he returned to the smoldering campfire, he found Raj, Eddie, Dax, and Mr. Jacobson stretching and yawning. "Fine morning, isn't it?" Addison began pleasantly. The tired group mumbled their agreement. "Oh, by the way," he continued, "I couldn't help but notice all our camels are gone." Dax jumped to his feet. Raj liked the look of that, and jumped to his feet as well. They searched the mesa for telltale footprints, but night winds had swept the area clean of tracks. "Some watchdog," said Molly, turning an accusatory eye on Mr. Jacobson. "Dax, your supposedly Great Dane, didn't bark once." Dax frowned and shrugged. "He's not a guard dog, he's a co-pilot." Addison shook his head at the ungainly dog. He preferred smart dogs that could fetch or perform tricks. Panting and drooling seemed to be the warp and woof of Mr. Jacobson's personality. "All right," said Addison, keeping things on track. "We'll just forage for some breakfast and be on our way." "Addison, we're in the middle of a desert," said Eddie. "You think food just grows on trees?" "Some food grows on trees. Apples, for instance." "Well, we haven't got any apple trees." "Save your energy for walking. We'll find food in Karakoram." Dax turned up the collar on his bomber jacket. Raj saw the move and did the same with his rain poncho. He liked the idea of foraging for food, but the slugs he'd eaten the previous day hadn't sat well with him. The key was to make it to Karakoram and hope they had decent takeout. The team shouldered their packs and trudged north. The scrub gave way to desolate grassland. Addison tried not to think about water, so he pictured his favorite place, the New York Museum of Archaeology. He pictured the Aztec temple it housed, surrounded by a reflecting pool with a fountain of cool, refreshing water. Water so deep you could dive in and drink for hours. Addison shook his head and pictured his second favorite place in the world, Bruno's Fossil Emporium on West 47th Street, aisles of fossils captured in sedimentary rock formed by eons of running water. Sweet, rejuvenating, thirst-quenching water. Addison frowned and thought of his third favorite place, Frank's Pizza on 23rd and Lexington. The perfect meatball slice, just a little salty, perfect with a tall glass of ice-chilled, life-giving water. His stomach growled and Addison growled with it. "Oh, does anybody know any good stories?" Raj piped up. "Did I ever tell you about the time I dared my sister to drink an entire gallon of water?" Addison frowned and kept on walking. After a few miles of listening to Raj's stories about his sisters, Dax requested they hike the next few miles in silence. By mid-morning, the ancient Mongol capital was rising out of the empty plains like a mirage. Surrounded by crumbling mud walls, it contained a few scattered ruins overgrown with centuries of grass. Addison insisted on reconnaissance, so they climbed a hill overlooking the once great city. "Karakoram," said Addison with a grand sweep of his arm. "The Black Prison, once the capital of the Mongol Empire, founded by Ogedei, the son of Genghis Khan." Molly looked at the shanty town of tin shacks surrounded by lumpy ruins of broken bricks. Not much now, is it? You try starting a capital, said Addison. See how it looks in 800 years. He thumbed through Roland J. Fiddleton's Asia Atlas and pointed out the city as Marco Polo once saw it. The Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, and the 12 pagan temples. Now the only ancient structure still standing was the Addison Cooke Buddhist monastery. Molly glassed the monastery using Raj's binoculars. She yelped when she spotted Tony Chin parking a large passenger van by the rear entrance. Tony slid open the suicide door and helped Madame Feng out. She was followed by Aunt Delia and Uncle Nigel, bound in handcuffs. Triads then poured out of the van in an endless stream, like clowns from a clown car. Addison crawled to the edge of the hilltop to take a closer look. He lay on his belly, peering through the binoculars. He spotted Boris's Russian team parking a fleet of silver Mercedes-Benzes on the far side of the monastery. He passed the binoculars to Molly. The ANU are leading the Chinese on a wild goose chase, and the Russians are falling for it. Why do you say that? Sir Frederick's clue said a Buddhist sanctuary in the city of the son of the Khan, and that is clearly the best and only Buddhist sanctuary around. Well, it's not the Buddhist sanctuary we're looking for. According to Roland J. Fiddleton, the Addison Cooke Monastery was built in 1585. Sir Frederick was there 300 years too early. Let me see if I get this straight, said Eddie. We just crawled across a desert with no food and water in order to find a Buddhist sanctuary that isn't here? I got some good news, said Dax, borrowing the binoculars and squinting at the tin huts of the shanty town. He pointed to the hitching post of a grubby Cantina. I just found our camels. Dax led the group down into the desolate shanty town, weaving past broken tractor parts to reach the forlorn Cantina. It was built of hammered scraps and corrugated tin. Addison recognized their camels tied at the hitching post, particularly when one of them tried to spit on Mr. Jacobson. Next to the camels stood a row of sturdy Mongolian horses with wild manes and forelocks. The only thing worse than a camel thief is a horse thief, said Dax. From the disgust in his voice, he seemed to be speaking from a great deal of personal experience. Addison marched up to the Cantina. A piece of black tarpaulin was hung for a door. He pushed his way inside and allowed a few seconds for his eyes to adjust to the gloom. A few hardened herdsmen leaned against the bar. What they lacked in personal hygiene, they made up for in facial hair. Addison spotted the camel trader by his bow legs and whip. He wore an ugly scowl and an uglier face. And unlike math, Addison did not think that multiplying two negatives made a positive. Normally, I would politely introduce myself, but I'm tired from walking all day because you stole our camels. The trader drew himself up to his full height. You call me a thief? I purchased these camels just this morning. Right, said Addison, unimpressed by his story. We need them back. That, said the trader, will cost you 10,000 yuan. Addison took a deep, existential sigh. He hadn't eaten for days, and for once, he found he just didn't have the energy. My friends and I are going to eat some food, and then we can negotiate the cost of buying back our stolen camels. The team dined on steamed dumplings and barbecued beef. Dax thought the beef might actually be horse meat, but Addison thought it was one of the best meals he'd ever tasted. He drank 7 glasses of water straight, barely pausing to breathe. He was astonished when the total bill came only to 50 yuan. The price was so reasonable he searched his soul from stem to stern and felt no urge to negotiate. The Cantina owner, excited to find customers pleased with the way he cooked horse meat, wanted to make conversation. Oh, have you come to see the Addison Cooke Monastery? It was an understandable question. There was almost no other earthly reason to visit Karakoram. Yet Addison eyed the owner closely. Ever since Madame Feng's betrayal in Hong Kong, he didn't want to make the mistake of trusting anyone. If he revealed his plans to the shopkeeper might squeal if interrogated by the triads. Yeah, we're here to see Addison Cooke, Addison lied. What's left of it. The Cantina owner scratched his scraggly goatee and nodded wistfully. There were once 60 temples, 300 gers, and 1,000 monks at the monastery. He drew a hand-rolled cigarette from behind his ear and lit it off a kerosene lamp that hung from the low tin ceiling. The communists destroyed all but 3 of the temples. They killed 10,000 monks across Mongolia. Our monks were some of the few to escape." "Where did the monks hide?" asked Addison, intrigued. "The 1,000 Buddha caves." "Are they close by?" "They are hidden in the dunes of Elsintasakare." Addison leaned forward with interest. "How old are these caves?" 1,000 years old. "And why are they called the 1,000 Buddha caves?" "Because there are so many Buddhas carved into rock." Addison arched one eyebrow at his team. The tingling on the back of his neck told him they had just found Sir Frederick's Buddhist sanctuary. He tipped the Cantina owner an extra 20 yuan. They hiked out of the valley to the dunes of Elsintasakare, where cliffs rose hundreds of feet from the desert floor. Addison had attempted to purchase their camels back from the trader, but ultimately decided that walking was cheaper. He regretted that choice the farther they trudged into the desolate wasteland. Mr. Jacobson bounded ahead of the group, chasing any sand plover or sandpiper that dared to show its face. Another half-mile, it was Molly who rounded a bend and spotted the 1,000-year-old monastery carved into the stone edifice of a cliff. The group scaled treacherous rocks and reached a narrow parapet that zigzagged up the yellow limestone gorge. Stone Buddhas, a dozen feet high, presided over the mountain path. The monastery was like a forest, impregnable to attack. For the price of a 100-foot climb in searing heat, they reached the carved entrance to the cave monastery. Mr. Jacobson celebrated the occasion by marking his territory. "Dax, your dog just relieved himself on a 1,000-year-old temple," said Addison. "Mr. Jacobson ain't interested in archaeology, kid. Just old bones." "Is he a barchaeologist?" tried Molly. Dax squinted at her, and he said nothing. She shrugged. It was worth a try. "That joke was only the rough draft," said Addison. The team surveyed the dark entrance to the cave monastery. It carried the musty cobalt smell of centuries. Wind whistled eerily in the opening, as if the cave mouth were moaning. Sir Frederick may have considered it a place of sanctuary, but Addison found the cave a bit too sinister for his taste. "You sure you want to go after the clue?" asked Dax. "We can still get out of here before the triads arrive." Addison shook his head. "We have to keep moving forward. Sun Tzu says attack is the secret of defense. Sun Tzu also says, he will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight." The whole group turned to look at Dax, impressed. Dax shrugged. "What, like I can't read books?" "Thanks, Dax, but we're doing this. We can't allow the triads to find the next clue. They'll steal the Khan's treasure if we give them the chance." Addison took an anxious glance back toward Karakoram, wondering how long Madame Feng would be delayed. "If you can find us a fast way out of here, that could save our lives." "Don't worry, kid. I can find a way in and out of any situation." Dax whistled for Mr. Jacobson and headed back down the cliff path. Addison and his team marched through the entrance of the 1,000 Buddha caves.